Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast. My name's Elijah. I'm here to kick off a position by position review of the Orioles 2024 season. We're going to move through this over the next couple of weeks to kind of preempt a look at this year's free agent class, what the O's might be looking for. I'm going to start off with second base, possibly because while it's a somewhat interesting position, we got Jackson Holliday. It was a really, really weak position for the Orioles this year. We totaled only .4 F4 at the position. Coming into the year, the plan was certainly to patch it together until Holliday was ready. It seemed like he was ready a week or two into the season. We bring him up, he was ready to take the world by storm, and just nothing went according to plan. Before we get too far into it, I want to thank the sponsor of our show, of course, Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, matchup, breakdown, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during games. With the largest catalog of odds on everything from football, MLB, NHL, NBA, to political props. When the game is over, head on over to the online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of over 150 slots games. Head to the website today, get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet online, the game starts here. So, on the broad scale, right, I told you the Orioles second baseman only provided .4 F4 this year, good for 26th in MLB. Defense at the position was rated 28th, offense 23rd. Overall, it was not good. The Orioles had 7 players get some time at second base this year, 3 of whom were positive value. Unfortunately, 2 people who were positive value were Livan Soto and Ramon Urias. Together, they totaled 19 plate appearances as second baseman. That said, those 2 were not a lot of positive value. There was only one regular who actually provided value at the position, and that was Jorge Mateo. Mateo had a fine season. It was kind of up and down, as we've seen the last couple of years from him. If he had gotten a full season of plate appearances, though, he was looking at something like a 2.5 F4 season. It's very much, on the caliber of any starting player in MLB, starting position player. That would have placed him, for reference, just behind Adley on a value rate basis for this year. Um, his in 2022, we saw this phenomenal year of just stellar defense from him. And we've been hoping to see that again. We didn't really see that this year. He was just average. When he was playing second, he was a league average hitter, though. And that's at a position that averages only a 91 WRC plus. He was at 97. And he was a menace as usual on the base paths, still 99th percentile sprint speed, still everything we have come to know and love from him as a base stealing threat. After Mateo, Jordan Westburg got 103 plate appearances as a second baseman. Would normally, expect, I came into this saying, oh, well, we had Westburg. Westburg was a perfect 0.0 F4. He was only replacement level in that time. He was actually a below average defender at second base, according to Fangraphs, and was slightly below average as a hitter while playing second base. When we look at Jordan Westburg, he is obviously an above average hitter. That's not something we're really worried about with him. Why he was so much worse while playing second was something I tried to noodle on and kind of figure out a little bit. It's interesting to me. Earlier in the year, kind of the way we would set it up, Mateo, was in there against left-handed pitching, of course. That's kind of what he does. He would sit against some right-handed pitchers. Urias would come in at third base, and Westberg would slide over to second. So you may think it was a positional split. He's only playing second base when he's facing right-handed hitting, but Westberg is significantly better against right-handed pitching, which would have implied that his numbers should have been better at second base. Obviously not the case. Sometimes it can be a manner of comfort at a given position. Something as simple as that. Westberg was in his first full season in the majors. You can't really expect him to jump between things and just consistently perform at 120 WRC plus kind of level. that doesn't make all too much sense. We'll give him grace for that. Um, but yeah, even so, I don't think there's any reason to consider him less than an option at second base. It does seem like he prefers third, and we obviously got the most out of him while he was over there. We got an all-star caliber third baseman. Um, but he really largely did not do it at second base this year. Um, and so, I told you the Orioles had .4 F4. Mateo had .8. Westberg wasn't even zero. You can ask what happened to kind of cut out half of what Mateo accomplished. The player who got the most plate appearances for the Orioles, and really is the topic of this podcast, wiped out half of Mateo's productivity. That would be Jackson Holliday. He got 196 plate appearances, was worth minus .4 F4. He was pretty average defensively. He ran the bases moderately well, and he was objectively terrible with the bat. Just like a natural feel for hitting, command of the strike zone, barrel control. These are the things we had heard about Holliday his entire way through the minors, since he had been drafted. He had 600 his senior year or whatever. Um, it didn't show. It just didn't show. I love Holliday. I wanted it to happen. It didn't happen. Of 365 players who received 200 or more plate appearances this year, Jackson Holliday by WRC Plus was the 24th worst hitter in Major League Baseball in the most, and I mean most hilarious fashion. The one person in MLB tied with him was former Oriole, former Keystone, absolute legend of the diamond, Adam Frazier. Adam Frazier was on par with Jackson Holliday's performance this year. Certainly not what you want to see from, a franchise cornerstone, someone that we have all hung our hopes on a lot. So disappointing year, but heading into 2025, we surely expect Jackson to take a step forward. He was only 20 years old this year. So it should get better. But what exactly went wrong for him this season? The big thing for me, it's very simply an inability to hit the fastball at the major league level. We all noticed this on his first taste up with the big league club in April. I'm not gonna pretend this is some novel idea that I just discovered, but in that first taste, Holliday whiffed on 89% of fastballs at the top of the zone. He took 9 swings and just missed on 8 of them. He failed to put a single ball in play. There is a bug flying around my head if you're watching on YouTube. um, but obviously there was this focused effort to train it. Things did get a bit better upon his return. We heard stories about, the foam balls that are firing out at 100 miles an hour with 40 inches of rise. So they're actually taking off a little bit. We did see some improvements, right? The whiff rate did go down. I guess it's impossible. It's not impossible for it to not go down. It theoretically could have jumped up to 9 out of 9 swings were whiffs. But that would have been very difficult. So the whiff rate did go down. And when contact was made on these high fastballs, it was loud. After his return at the end of July, he slugged 611 and had an average exit velocity of 97.6 miles an hour. Which obviously, if that was a number extrapolated over a whole season and a wide range of pitches, that would be absolutely elite. That is not an average exit velocity for anybody. That said, the whiff rate was still over 37% on these high fastballs. Grayson's changeup, one of the best pitches on the Orioles for comparison, gets whiffs at just under a 35% clip. And fastballs really do not generate whiffs like that. They're not supposed to. Only really, really elite ones will do that. Something like, I don't know, everybody in the Cleveland bullpen, throwing these rise balls at 98 miles an hour, except Class A. Before people jump on me, Class A doesn't get whiffs. But so, fastballs are not like swing and miss pitches, right? They are meant to attack you in the zone. When they are when they are thrown appropriately and up in the zone, they can get some whiffs, but largely, it's straight. It's not going to have the same effect that this thing sweeping a foot and a half outside away from you is gonna do. Um, so a 37% whiff rate when league average is right around like a 30%-ish. That's not great. And I should say that's league average on all pitches. Should be lower for fastballs again. He's whiffing a lot on 61 swings. He managed to put just 12 balls in play. That obviously includes foul balls and everything like that, but it just does go to show that when he is making contact with these high fastballs, although he is doing some damage, he very simply is not doing it consistently. He's fouling them off. He is either connecting with the high fastball in a meaningful way or getting absolutely nothing out of it. And unfortunately, much more often, it was nothing. So, pitchers, obviously, he has this horrible, horrible showing in April. He goes sent back down, comes back up at the end of July, spends August, and then by September, pitchers have really just figured this out. He came back up, and I remember we saw him hit the grand slam was on a high fastball, if I remember correctly. We saw him get to a couple of them, and I think that kind of tempered things. And then in September, the league collectively said, "Oh no, he still can't hit the high fastball." Usage of fastballs in general jumped up to over 60% against him. But that wasn't really the only weakness throughout the year. He also really struggled against cutters and sliders in particular. Between the two, he saw 195 of those, got just 4 hits. They were about 25% of the pitches he saw this year. His whiff rate was above 40% on both pitches. Hard hit rate down at this paltry 20%. Really, I think this is almost part of compensation for trying to get to the fastball, and the pitches that tunnel most well with it then become invisible to you as you're chasing this thing at the top of the zone. What Holliday did do fairly well, though, was he was able to hit off speed. This is kind of one of the more impressive things about him. I've heard the term loose hips used to describe him. And what that kind of speaks to is his ability to sort of adjust his body, keep his torso and his swing, like keep his torso in a good hitting position, like even when he's out in front. So he's able to kind of sink into that front leg as an off-speed pitch is fading a little bit. Stride lands, he sinks into the front leg, but his torso stays back and he's able to put a good swing on. Over the course of the season, like the numbers do kind of support this. Whiff rate on off-speed pitches was down under 30%. Ex-WOBA right around 300. Hard hit rate was like about league average 44%. Overall, I think that you can look at that and you can understand the sort of things that made him seem like such a tantalizing prospect. Not that he, has any less promise now. He's still very, very, very talented, still should be a phenomenal player by all accounts. But what made him so incredible in the minors, I think, was just this natural ability to adjust in terms of like the loose hips and body control, like I talked about, but coupled with this incredibly good feel for the barrel. I think that really shines in the example of these off-speed pitches. These mid-pitch adjustments are able to be made on off speed for whatever reason. It's what he sees better, and he's able to do that and carry that skill through a bit more, let that shine. But all in all, I think like when you look at it and you say, okay, well, what has kind of fallen apart for him? The very simple fact of the matter is MLB fastballs are just much, much better. And, in my eyes, I think constantly having to respect this top of the zone fastball, be ready to pull your hands through at the top of the zone, that kind of interrupts some of the fluidity you have. It makes you stay a bit upright to make sure you can stay on top of that. And it makes the game much more about like just seeing it early and getting your good swing off, as opposed to tracking and letting your body adjust and making these mid-pitch adjustments that I think are what he really does so well. Um, Obviously, I think that Jackson Holliday will be in better form next year. He is a talented kid. He is obviously very, very young still. Once again, he was 20 years old this year. So by no means am I making this pod to sound alarm bells, right? I'm here just giving an assessment of what the Orioles saw this year. Um, but I think we can also take some solace in the fact that Jorge Mateo will be recovered from the gruesome injury uh, to his left elbow that we saw in the collision with Gunnar Henderson. He should be recovered from that, and he will likely serve as an option early in the season, particularly against left-handed pitching. Um, a lot of Orioles fans who want us to take this next step are tired of Jorge Mateo. The Orioles, have taken a next step. We are a very, very good team, and Jorge Mateo still belongs on a good team. Mateo had a 127 WRC plus against lefties last year, almost an 800 OPS, well above league average hitter. If you want to give Jackson a platoon role, let him ease in, let him see some more of this, and continue to gain experience at the MLB level, then Jorge can certainly fill the weak side of a platoon role. He can serve as a bat off the bench. He can serve as a source of speed off the bench, like we've talked about. I think going into this coming year, you have to expect him to have a pretty substantial role early on in the year. This is not an indictment of Holliday. This is not me saying anything bad about him, but if the Orioles want to not just I I guess the biggest thing, and this kind of is the case with all of these young guys, there is a learning curve and you have to have a safety net. We saw it with Jackson this year. We saw it with Kobe Mayo. You have to have a safety net for these guys. You have to be able to pull them out, work with them for a number of days in the cage, work with them on certain things, and then reinsert them in this gradual manner. I don't think that we can just expect Jackson Holliday to all of a sudden be an all-star next year. I think there is a chance that he could be. I'm not saying he can't be, but there's a chance that he's just not very good again, and it's going to take 2 more years to actually realize his potential. Um, so, yeah, I think Jorge Mateo is going to be incredibly valuable. I do expect Westberg to get a little bit of time over there again, despite third base obviously being more comfortable for him. I think as we work Kobe Mayo into the mix a little bit more, we'll start to see Westberg moving around a little bit. But refocusing. Yeah, if Holiday doesn't seem fully ready for a full-time role, Mateo has the good streak against lefties. And then I guess just to fill out the trivia sheets, because I mentioned a number of guys got time at second base. The other two players who got time with the 2024 Orioles, give people a second to pause if they want to try to guess it for themselves. Connor Norby and the guy who we signed to hold down the fort, hold down the keystone, serve as the glue for the first week of Orioles baseball, Tony Kemp. He of 7 plate appearances and a minus 100 WRC plus. That is a very low number, exceedingly bad. Yeah, about 145% worse than Jackson Holliday. So not ideal. But Orioles legend Tony Kemp, he was a champ. He was, super, super gracious in how he left the org. He cheered for Jackson Holliday. So we appreciate him. And Sporkle quizzes in 10 years will inevitably give us a very hard time because of him. All that said, this was a weakness for the Orioles. I do not expect us to actually go out and do anything about it whatsoever, though. You anticipate some progression from Jackson Holliday. You anticipate, better health from Mateo, and you do have the safety net of Westberg sliding over if something else falls apart. I don't think this is really the place to adjust. As we continue through these positional reviews, I think it will become apparent what some of us think. I think, for me personally, first base, a right-handed hitting outfielder, these are the things that we could clearly, stand to improve. But I digress. We'll keep moving through it as we do. Um, and yeah, shout out to Tony Kemp. That's the only thing I got. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, if you could please subscribe to and or follow the podcast, whatever your preferred platform is, we're always grateful for that support. Helps us continue to grow. Be sure to like the videos on YouTube, rate the podcast on streaming platforms, leave comments, reviews, anything you can, wherever possible. We are eternally grateful for it. And then after you tell the world how much you love us, come give us a shout on Twitter. We are at the Warehouse Pod, threads under the same handle. And you can always email us, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. Thank you guys for the support. This has been the Warehouse Pod. My name's Elijah, and as always, go O's.